So we'll move on to the next talk by Dr. Jayaraman Mahadevan on Indic approach to thesis construction. I'll just give a small short introduction of Dr. Jayaramanji. So Dr. Jayaramanji is now the Dean of Yoga Spirituality Division of SVYASA University, Bengaluru. He was the Director of Research at Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram in Chennai and a member of various academic boards and committees related to Samskrita and Yoga. He holds a PhD in the doctrine of Tantrayukti from the University of Madras, along with postgraduate degrees in Sanskritam, journalism, and mass communication. His extensive training in Samskrita and Yoga stems from traditional Gurukula education and includes teaching experience. Dr. Mahadevan has authored several books, translated important texts, and presented papers in seminars and conferences globally. He has also published research papers on yoga and led significant projects such as Yogasya Bhasha and Yoga Vaisha. I request Dr. Jayaramanji to kindly deliver this lecture.
Namaste. Yeah. Namaste, Srinivasji. You can hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I will do the Mangalacharanam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Virjam Karavavahai Tejasvina Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. At the outset, I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. At another occasion to share about Tantrayukti and its potentials in thesis construction. And so the title that I have given to the topic, though the general title was given as thesis construction methodology from Indic approach, I have tightened the title or kind of refined the title. I was told that people have heard about Tantrayukti, so we have to move a little bit ahead from Tantrayukti. So hence, I thought this topic. But of course, for those who are not acquainted with Tantrayukti, I will certainly give a brief, very brief overview. People can still, participants can still, researchers can still go and enrich their inputs on Tantrayukti later. So this is the topic that I have chosen in the short time that I have towards formalizing thesis construction inputs of Tantrayukti in academia. So in the various topics that are seen here, so many thoughts are emerging how we are going to incorporate, or it is contemplated, or discussion is being done as to what are all the inputs that we have. So still stock taking exercise is happening in the field of research methodology, whereas now we have in Tantrayukti something which we can right away apply. So I just place it before. These are my very strong views, in the sense that I have a very strong feeling and also a conviction that Tantrayukti can right away be applied. And I will also suggest the ways and means, propose the ways and means for which I welcome the scholarly community to comment upon. So hence Tantrayukti is the primary thing is Tantrayuktis have to have something to contribute to thesis construction methodology. So what Tantrayuktis are, I'll just give a brief in 2-3 minutes. So Tantrayuktis are 32 to 36 devices for text construction. In Kautilya Arthashastra it is 32 and Charaka Samhita it is 36. So how to construct a text, how to write a text, how to plan and exhibit or kind of place on record one's thoughts systematically. So that is the devices of Tantrayukti. Tantra means Shastra, Yukti means devices. So the devices to share one's researched knowledge. So that is Tantrayukti in brief. For that 32 to 36 devices are there. Along with Tantrayukti, Tantra again I have to clarify, Tantra means Shastra. It is not the Tantra or Kundalini or something like that. That's not connected to that. The word specific meaning of Tantra here is a Shastra. Ayurvedaha Shakha Vidya Shastram Tantram Sutram Lakshanam Ityanarthantaram. That's how we have. So Tantra is a synonym for Shastra. Okay. So along with the 32 rules for text construction, we also have what are the virtues and vices in text construction in form of Tantra Gunas and Tantra Doshas. Most of these are documented in the Ayurveda literature. An interesting aspect of it is this Tantrayukti is its reach is pan-Indian. In the sense, we have certain Tantra Shastra texts using couple of Tantrayuktis in Kashmir, and then one Neelamegha Bishak in Kerala, who is writing a Ayurveda text using these Tantrayuktis. So pan India reach in the IKS we can see for Tantrayukti, and also it is translingual, and in the sense it's not only limited only to Samskrita. So the same Tantrayuktis can be found in Tamil literature also, the traditional ancient Tamil literature, and traces of Tantrayukti can be found in Pali literature also. So it is translingual and also transdisciplinary. Across disciplines, various systems of knowledge, they have used these Tantrayuktis for text construction, be it Vedanta. Acharya Shankara himself refers to one Anumata Tantrayukti in Brahma Sutra Bhashya. And then in Nyaya Sutra Bhashya, we have Ayurveda, Arthashastra, Vyakarana, Panini Vyakarana. One B.S. Agrawala, based on his research, he says Panini was aware of 18 Tantrayuktis in text construction. And we can see that more than a millennia. So this has been used from the Kautilya Arthashastra to 19th century Tamil texts. So we have a very continuous use of this also. So this was not something which is archaic or kind of a fossilized entity, which we are now trying to unearth and trying to put to use. No, this was in vogue, as was mentioned by the previous speaker, that there was certain dark ages, but it doesn't seem that for Tantrayukti there was dark ages as long as texts were appearing. So we see references to Tantrayuktis. These are based on only my one person's limited research. So if more minds are applied, we may unearth more and more texts across centuries which might have used, which would show the influence of Tantrayuktis and so on and so on. So this in brief is an overview of Tantrayukti. And when we see this, now just to again certain sentences. So we heard from our Shastric background what this is, and those who were into after the advent of the British, when the people went into Tantrayukti, this is how they have rendered Tantrayukti into plan of treatise, forms of scientific argument, formal elements which gave form to a scientific work, methodology and technique which enabled one to compose treatises of science correctly and intelligently, and method of treatment, maxims of interpretation, methodology of theoretical scientific treatises, an expedient in writing science, methodology in Sanskrit texts on science. So since 1909 till 2006, so chronologically, many scholars have observed that this is a document which gives us methods, approaches to both plan a treatise and also interpret the given literature. So, so this is to acquaint more the participants with Tantrayukti. I have used this slide also. And in Shastras, what have they been seen for? So what is the prayojana of Tantrayukti as stated in the Shastra? We can see that in Charaka Samhita says, Prabodha Prakasharthaha Tantrayuktayaha. Prabodha, awakening new ideas, Prakasha, bringing to light inherent ideas. So that is the prayojana of Tantrayukti seen as per Charaka Samhita. Sushruta Samhita goes one step further. It says, Vakyayojanam, Arthayojanam, Asadvadi Pratishedha, Swavakya Siddhihi, Avyakta Leena Anirmala Prasadhana. Connecting the sentences, connecting the concepts, refuting wrong theories, establishing one's view, bringing or clarifying unclear, hidden, incorrect ideas, and completing them. So these are all the functions of Tantrayukti as perceived in the Shastras, or as elucidated in the Shastras themselves. But one thing that one can observe, that more than when we speak about research methodology, how to bring out new content, new ideas, new concepts, how to innovate or kind of reflect, refine. So that is the content part of it. When you observe all these things, except the first one, the first prayojana that has been observed, the rest of it, be it Prakasha, Vakyayojana, Arthayojana, Sadvadi Pratishedha, Swavakya, these are all about structuring the treatise, and also how to three aspects are brought out in 2 to 7 points, 2 to 7, where it speaks about structuring one's arguments, one's thoughts, etc., and then what kind of language it has to it looks into the language aspect of it, and also it is more about interpreting. So hence Tantra, what to expect from Tantrayukti should also be clear. We should not have kind of too much of an expectation from Tantrayukti, then it will we may have a disappointment. So as my analysis goes, that of course there are inputs on content creation in Tantrayukti, but more often, as I have repeatedly discussed, spoken, thought of it, I understand this as a manual for a structured expression of researched content. And what is the language dimension, what attention that has to be paid in the context of language. So these two are the major contributions in Tantra, which means how to write a thesis, in the sense how to structure a thesis, and then what kind of a language should be used. So these are the general guidelines that we can get. And one more thing is that, is Tantrayukti comprehensive? In the sense, does it cover everything? Normally what we can hear is, oh, this the Western model has so many details. If you see books like MLA writers for research papers, etc., etc., so comprehensive. But you say only 32 to 36 yuktis. Is it comprehensive? No, it may not be. Means as such, this document of 32 to 36 yuktis are like a checklist, and that's how it has been used by our acharyas also. So they provide the checklist in the beginning, or at the end they show that we have ticked all these boxes. So in that sense, it's a fundamental checklist where we don't miss the basics. So in that dimension, this is the expectation, that it is not that with Tantrayukti itself all our thesis construction methods and everything is answered. No, this is a document which presents the bare minimum, the foundation, the fundamentals, the basic unmissables of a thesis construction in text, in the context of structuring and the language of it. That you can expect from Tantrayukti. If you are taking that, it is immediately applicable. So I will present how in the current academic scenario, how we can bring it. My analysis of Tantrayukti is basically based on Kautilya Acharya's utilization of Tantrayukti in the Arthashastra. In the 15th Adhikarana, he uses 32 Tantra Yuktis. Based on my analysis, I see those Tantra Yuktis divided into 3 sets, contributing checklists for content. I use the word once again, contributing checklists for content creation, contributing checklists for structuring the thesis, contributing inputs on how to refine the language. Again, checklists for language of a thesis. So hence, this is my analysis. So based on this, we can see that I'm more into, I'm not, so these are the yuktis, samshaya, anumata, apadesha, hetvartha, upadesha. I'm not going into defining and describing all these things. I'm just laying bare my thoughts on the applicability of these yuktis. So, and then yuktis, there are 12 yuktis for structuring the thesis and 9 yuktis for refining the language, including yoga, padartha, vyakhyana, nirvachana, upamana, etc. Now, so you have, as I mentioned, you have this notion of checklist. Have the checklists been developed? And that is what I am here to offer. Based on the Tantra Yukti, Tantra Guna, Tantra Dosha manual, so we can develop. This is my proposal. This is the input that I am sharing this for the first time here. And so we can develop immediately applicable set of 4 documents for the current academia, especially in Samskrita field, and widening it to IKS field, and later if this is if it works well, and then to the wider the academia at large in any discipline. So what I propose is that 3 basic checklists for thesis writers of research paper and also evaluators of research paper can be created. One is Bharatiya Shodha Sattva Sampat. That is, sattva here means content. So Bharatiya standards for, or you can even call it as a Bharatiya checklist based on Tantrayukti for contents of a thesis. And Bharatiya Shodha Sahitya Samrachana Prarupa. Samrachana here is structure. So Bharatiya thesis structuring format. And then Bharatiya Shodha Sahitya Bhasha Bindu. Thesis language guidelines based on Tantrayukti. Additionally, there is another document one we can have based on this Tantrayukti document, that is Bharatiya Shodha Sahitya Kritya Akritya Avali. So do's and don'ts for research literature. And these are are applicable both for the researchers at the same time for evaluators. Now let me put it to you. Let me explain it, or kind of in a little bit detail, in the sense that what I propose is using these 4 documents, while for researchers also it is useful, and especially in the context of evaluation, both quantitative assessment parameters and qualitative assessment parameters also emerge from these. This is what I propose this time. And with Bharatiya Shodha Sattva Sampat. So what are the checklists? What are the 5 basic checklists that emerge for researchers? I call it as a Panchapadi. So there are these 11 Tantrayuktis from where we can have 5 aspects of fundamental checklists for thesis construction. So these are the yuktis: Samshaya, Anumata, Apadesha, Hetvartha, Upadesha, et al., and Uhyam. So based on this, I'm not elaborating on each of these points. So what questions, and these are all based on the traditional commentaries only. Nothing has been extraneously kind of interpreted here. Whatever naturally emerges from the meaning of these yuktis, I have converted into a Panchapadi or 5-stepped standards for content checklist. So a researcher can be given this Panchapadi, where does your thesis have a valid, useful research question? Samshaya. And then, have you done systematic literature review and identified the gaps, which is based on the Apadesha Tantrayukti? You may hear the word literature review. Oh, literature review seems to be a Western term, or kind of, it is not heard of in our Shastras. No, in our Shastras, that was called as Apadesha. So, evam asau aha ityapadeshaha. Hence, it's not a kind of Western idea that came that, oh, you look into others' literature review and so on and so forth. So, the second question for content. And then, have you quoted from the works of others with proper acknowledgement? Paramatam apratishidham anumatam itihi tantrayuktihi. So whether one can agree or disagree, all those things are there. So hence, that is anumata. This is the third aspect for the content. So a researcher, when he is finishing his thesis, these are the questions that he have to go over and think seriously. And then, have you examined the validity and soundness of the reasons and the arguments that you have adduced in various portions of the thesis? A thesis should have reasons. It should reason out. It should argue for certain aspects. This is how it is, or this is how it should be, and new ideas which are put forth. So hence the logical soundness or validity that has to be checked in that checklist. So it emerges from the Tantrayukti Hetvartha. Hetuhu Artha Sadhakaha Hetvartha. Whether the hetus that you have given are really Artha Sadhakas, or do they resemble some Hetva Bhasa? So one should think about the validity of the reasons adduced. At the spur of the moment, one may have given so many explanations, etc. So it is very essential that a person goes back and thinks really whether his hetus are Artha Sadhakas, or hetus are Hetvarthas. Artha Sadhaka hetus. And then, what is the nature of your original contribution? So that emerges from Niyoga, Ekanta, Vikalpa, Samuchaya, Uhya Tantrayuktis. So have you suggested something new, which is Upadesha, or have you observed certain inviolable rules or kind of mandatory rules, or you have observed certain phenomena with exceptions, without exceptions? Have you observed optional phenomena, whether it happens this way or that way? And then, have you observed when a particular thing happens with a combination of factors? And then, have you also taken into account certain unseen, you may have framed a particular rule or kind of suggest certain things in a given context. Have you accounted for those things which have to be decided contextually? So hence all these define. So Niyoga, Ekanta, Vikalpa, Samuchaya, Uhya, all these define the originality in the contribution. Have I made any of these contributions in my thesis? So these are the 5 points of checklist that emerge from 12 Tantrayuktis. And I have marked them M in red, which means these are all mandatory. One cannot miss any of these. Researcher, while constructing his thesis, cannot miss about thinking about his research question or literature review, or referring to the previous authors, taking or agreeing or disagreeing from them, and then the soundness of his argument, and also reflecting upon whether really one has made original contribution in terms of any of these 5 Tantrayuktis. The same thing can be rendered for, the same Panchapati can be rendered for the evaluators also. So when we get many theses to evaluate, but how do we evaluate the thesis? So when we speak of research methodology or thesis construction has one who is writing and who is evaluating. So value has to be increased on both sides, from the side of the researcher, from the side of the evaluator also. So hence the same questions can be recasted for an evaluator also, whoever looks into the thesis. Does the thesis have a valid research question? Is the literature review sound, and has there been quotations with proper this thing without plagiarism? And then does the thesis have the hetus properly? And then what is the nature of the Tantrayuktis? What is the nature of the original contribution? Does it fall under any of these categories? Niyoga, Ekanta, Vikalpa, Samuchaya. So with these 5 factors, evaluator can look into the content of the thesis. And then, so this is Panchapadi checklist for evaluators and researchers from the point of view of content. Now coming to structuring. So this can be termed as Bharatiya Shodha Sahitya Samrachana Prarupa. Here we have Saptapadi. 7 points of checklist can be developed from the Tantrayuktis. 12 Tantrayuktis are there. Adhikarana Vidhana Uddesha Nirdesha Purvapaksha Uttarapaksha Atikranta Anagata Vekshana Atidesha Pradesha Prasanga and Viparyaya. From these 12 yuktis, very interesting that these structured Tantrayuktis mostly fall in pairs. So that's another point of discussion which we can take up in a different point. Now here, based on these 12 yuktis, we can develop a 7-point checklist for structuring. So a researcher can reflect upon the structure of his thesis. So one thing is, do you have a well-defined thesis title, which is called as Adhikaranam? Yam artham adhikritya uchyate tad adhikaranam. And then, do you have a table of contents, which is Vidhanam, Prakarananupurvi Vidhanam? Have you listed and elaborated the topics systematically, which is Uddesha and Nirdesha? Have you systematically stacked the arguments against and for your thesis? Where Purvapaksha and Uttarapaksha. There are also many Purvapakshas, many Uttarapaksha. There is a very beautiful system of Purvapaksha, Uttarapaksha. And then, have you tightened your thesis by hyperlinking discussion? I have discussed something earlier. If I am discussing something relevant later, have I connected it to that, so that there is a beautiful connection in the thesis? And then, have you optimized the utilization of rules, logics, arguments created? I have created a rule for the Atidesha of which can happen later, or I will later create a rule or kind of make an observation which can also be equally applicable to a previous occasion, and not avoiding redundancy in creating similar thoughts or similar arguments, etc. So hence that's 6th question of checklist. And then, have you optimized the volume of the thesis by using techniques of stating the converse and then same as above? So this is also two yuktis are here. That is a Viparyaya and Prasanga. So we use the word ditto. So in the context of Tantrayukti, Prasanga Yukti means a ditto. Means I will not repeat, so many things are common in the previous paragraph and the next paragraph. I will not use the same. I will simply say using Purvavat or Purvam Yatha Kathitam. So that is the utilization of Prasanga Tantrayukti. Or I will say one in a positive way, Viparitam atonyatha. That's all. So I'll just say that converse of it applies to in an opposite case. So in this way, these are all the ways of optimizing the volume or tightening the language, tightening the expressions and sentences, and volume is also reduced that way. So basically, these are the 7 saptapadis for a researcher to look into in when he is casting his thesis, casting his ideas, casting his findings in the form of a thesis. So again, here you can see that among these 7, I consider the first 5 as mandatory, which cannot be missed. That very thought out thesis or title, and then the table of contents well arranged, and listing and elaborating the topics, and then systematically stacking arguments, tightening the thesis. These are all kind of very mandatory basic things and desirable things. Means we cannot expect a sudden jump in the quality of research when you suddenly apply all these things. The other 2 are desirable. So kind of stating the converse and doing the same as above can be done by anyone, but still stating the converse, etc., need a little bit more of application of the mind. And then Atidesha Pradesha, optimizing the rules, etc. That may optimizing the rules or statements or arguments, etc. So that may come with a little more kind of advanced or more absorbed thinking, etc. So we may not expect it from every other researcher, but if it is there, it is an excellent contribution. So the first 5 are mandatory, and the last 2, according to me, in the checklist are desirable. So, and the same can be casted for a evaluator also. Does the thesis have a defined title? Table of contents are there. So these are all the things that evaluator also should look into. Not only so, these make me understand whether the thesis as an evaluator, whether the thesis is sound or not. And then this is the next, the third document that I am presenting here is again Bhasha Bindu Saptapadi. So what are the aspects of language that I should look into in writing my thesis? So these are 9 yuktis. I see them in 3 parts. So the language should clarify, explain. Language should imply and refine. And language should also be allowed to invent. So these are the 3 major roles. Based on this, again, another Bhasha Saptapadi based on Tantrayukti can be created, checklist for Bhasha. That is, does the thesis clarify contextual meanings of the technical terms used? Padavadhikaha arthaha padarthaha. That comes from Padartha Tantrayukti. And then does the language of the thesis paraphrase and clarify meanings of the passages? I write one paragraph in a very, I have a very strong urge and I convey my ideas. Do I paraphrase it? Do I make it intelligible to the reader? Means I may be at a different plane, but can I bring the reader also, the one who is going to evaluate, one who is going to read and benefit from this? Have I paraphrased it and made the reader also, taken the reader along with me? So that is Yoga Tantrayukti. And then does the language of your thesis elaborate on intricate topics in a justified manner? So elaboration, Vyakhyana Tantrayukti is there. Vyakhya is a Tantrayukti. Elaboration is also essential. Now, just to fill in the pages, people elaborate current day thesis, but elaboration itself is very Atishaya Varnana Vyakhyanam. What is not generally known, all those ideas should be brought out through a very systematic elaboration. And then, so have I done it in a justified manner? That's why I use justified manner. People can tie a cow to the tree and start speaking about the cow and not the tree itself. So that not that justification, but a justified elaboration is there. And then, does the language of the thesis employ similes and examples? Of course, the language can also be. So have I taken the, when it says upamana and nidarshana in a research content, in a thesis, can there be similes and examples? Can there be? Is it a poetry? People may ask about it, but still taking the reader from known to unknown. Drishtena adrishtasya sadhanam. That's what is given. So if not direct giving certain poetic full-blown imagery that way, but at least the spirit of it, am I taking the reader or the evaluator, whoever is pursuing my thesis, from known to unknown? Is that approach adopted in my language? So that is very important. That is the 4th aspect of checklist that a researcher should reflect upon his thesis structure. Have you attempted to avoid verbosity in language by employing ellipsis and implication? There is Vakyashesha, and then there is Arthapatti. So it is not that everything has to be explicitly stated. You can state certain things intelligently. Certain ideas can flash in the mind. That's what makes the reading intelligent or kind of absorbing and make the people think. So is my language making the reader think, or have I laid everything in open and there is nothing to be reflected upon based on the thesis? So, and then does the language of the thesis employ etymological derivations to clarify in certain contexts? When we use traditional literature, etc., it is very essential that nirvachanam, etymological derivation, should also be given. And then finally, have you coined any new term to express your innovation and findings? This is swasamjna. So here these are the 7 points of checklist in a thesis language aspect of it. Here also the first 5 I see it as mandatory, and then the last 2 is desirable, because not every thesis will come out with an innovative terminology, or in not every thesis we would require an etymological derivation for everything. So, but the other aspects of giving the contextual meaning, giving the paraphrasing, elaboration appropriately, taking from known to unknown, using arthapatti, etc., all these are very essential aspects as I see them. Now, okay, these are presented, these documents are, and the same thing can be rendered for the evaluators also. So has the person given the contextual meaning? Is there etymological meanings? Is there an attempt from the researcher to paraphrase and clarify, etc.? I'm not elaborating on each of this. The same thing can be rendered for an evaluator also. So from content, structure, and language, we have 3 documents, means 3 into 2. One each for researcher and also an evaluator, which can be directly applied. So, and then how to incorporate it, how to implement it in the current scenario. Students can be taught these Tantrayuktis with examples. So modules are available. Already I have done a 1 credit course on this. So how to do each of this? So each yukti one can understand, and then assignments can be written based on these yuktis, on these panchapadi and the 2 saptapadis based on one's own research area. And then from the point of view, the researcher, from the evaluators, and also, so this is one thing, he undergoes the coursework. And the second thing is, in a thesis also, just like a methodology section which is mandatory in the thesis, so this can also be incorporated along with that, where these panchapadi and the 2 saptapadis, they have to be exhibited. So in which part of the thesis I have used this, that's how Acharya Kautilya has done. All the 32 Tantrayuktis he has given, he has defined, and he has also shown in which Vakya I have used this Yukti. So hence, this is the methodology that is employed, or this is the approach that Kautilya himself has done. So rather than doing it in 32 steps, it will be 14 plus 5, 19 steps we can apply. So for all the 19 instances, one example should be adduced from the thesis. What is the page number, which is the context. And if there are, it is not that these yuktis are, or these things are applied in one instances. If the time permits, if the researcher is meticulous enough, he can show many other occurrences also. But at least one occurrence of these 19 steps, which are derived from 32 Tantra Yuktis, should be made mandatory in the thesis content itself. And then towards grading of this, so I also have some suggestions here. So for the content related parameters, I had given 5 parameters or 5 checklists. So each of this that can be given 10 marks, which is 50. And then for the structure related parameters, which are 7 in number, the first 5 are mandatory. So all the 5 carry 25 marks. And then for language also, there are 7 parameters, out of which the first 5 are mandatory. So totally it comes to 100. A normal thesis would get 100 marks. And then if the other 2 extra parameters are also kind of followed, then one can go to 120 marks also. So the desirable parameters are also achieved, then we can grade it also quantitatively. That is a less than 70 major revision. So we normally say major revision, minor revision, recommended or recommended for publication. What are the parameters? What are the quantifiable parameters Tantrayukti offers, or Tantrayukti inspired thing we can offer quantify. Above 100 is highly recommended. You can adjudicate it as a best thesis. 90 to 100 is recommended. 70 to 90 minor revisions. And those minor revisions will also be very pointed. We can say that these are all the points of revisions. We will not be speaking in the air. And then, and one more thing, people these days, as I observe, a very true and honest thing, we get thesis for review, or many professors and scholars get thesis for review. They do 100 things, and amidst that they have to read the thesis also. If there is no standards or methods or protocols or parameters, or if there is a parameter, if it suits, then I am also, in the sense, my time is also optimized. So Tantrayukti offers that also. So at least if I am not able to concentrate on all the aspects of it, at least these 19 aspects of it, my evaluation is decent. And my evaluation is also according to IKS, and it is evidence. And I can give pointed inputs to the researcher also. So these are the quantitative kind of assessment that can be given. And the qualitative, I will very briefly finish, Srinivasji. I know I am running out of time and I am encroaching, but I got 10 minutes late only. So hence, there are Tantra Guna and Tantra Dosha documents also, where what are the qualities of good thesis, what is a bad thesis. There also you can see that it contributes to content, structure, and language. Comments on a good content, comments on good structure, comments on good language. And the reverse is also there. Based on this, Kritya, do's and don'ts can be developed for content. I'm not reading out everything. I'm just showing this document. All these are captured in my upcoming book on Tantrayukti, which is almost in the final stages, which will be released in a month's time. It is ready for publication. So 3 documents are there on content, do's and don'ts for structure, and do's and don'ts for language of it. And then how to implement, again, coursework of this could be given, and students can write their assignments based on this. And evaluators, how can they use these do's and don'ts? Can look for these do's and don'ts and write a research report. Of course, they can give the marks based on the previous parameters. When they write their qualitative comment, so they can use these do's and don'ts given under the content, structure, language, and then they can give a qualitative assessment under content division, structure division, and language division. Of course, beyond this, if there are any other comments, they can also give it. So hence, Tantrayukti offers both for researchers and also evaluators qualitative and quantitative parameters to look into their thesis. And the important aspect is this is ready, available for implementation right away. And I myself, I know there may be questions, may not be questions, so I myself put a few questions on this presentation and quickly finish it. Is this perfect yet? I would say this is in beta version, and then this is released or kind of presented here, so corrections and additions can be made, but at least swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So from that point of view, so these checklists certainly will upgrade from wherever we are now, and then and right away it can be done. Where there is a will, there will be a way. And then what are the where are the details of punctuations, referencing, bibliography, etc. For that, I would take the view of Swami Vivekananda, where we say best of the West and the best of the East. If those details are available there, Ano Bhadra Kratavo Yantu Vishwataha. And then does these not have elements that ape the Western methodology? As I mentioned earlier, that literature review, etc. When we hear of these terms, these sound Western, because we have heard it only from them. But these checklists that I have developed, these are entirely based on what I have read into Tantrayuktis and not kind of looked into those. So hence, if this also suggests the same, if independently both come to a meeting point, then it seems to be sound and perfect. It only justifies what we are doing, and it is appropriate. And then is it only applicable to IKS? Initially, yes, IKS, especially Samskrita, field of Samskrita, then to IKS, and can be suggested to other streams also, with, of course, valuable inputs from scholars, or training modules and resources available. Of course, one credit content is already created. FDBs can be conducted for faculty, orientation can be done, and then book is also almost ready for publication. So I know many of the readers may want to know more about Tantrayukti. You can listen to a 30-minute talk on Tantrayukti. If you scan this, I will leave the presentation with the organizers. And if you want a 3-hour talk on Tantrayukti, that is also available. So with this, I end my presentation with these proposals.
Wonderful, wonderful, Acharya. Thank you very much. So you gave us, as we asked for a way to build a thesis, you gave us Una Vimshati Padi. So thank you very much for that.